Today, we will be following my journey across the city of Verona. Verona has been around for quite some time, so long in fact that we don't actually know the origins of the city. We do know that it became a Roman colony in 89 BC and then classified as a city in 49 BC by the Romans. It served as a strategic point and site of many battles throughout the first millennia, being an intersection of several roads in Italy. In the 1600s, they were then struck with the plague, losing over 60% of their population. They bounced back only to be occupied 150 years later by Napoleon. This didn't last very long, but Verona did become Austrian territory as part of the deal, and stayed that way for nearly 60 years until they were brought back under Italian control during the Third Italian War of Independence in 1866. Today, the city stands as one of the main tourist destinations in Italy due to its history in the arts, stunning Roman ruins scattered throughout the city, powerful architecture, and as the site of two of Shakespeare's plays, Romeo and Juliet and The Two Gentlemen of Verona. I started outside the Maffiano Lapidari Museum, which is currently closed but is one of the oldest museums in the world, founded in 1745. I then went just up the street to find myself right outside of the Verona Arena, an ancient Roman amphitheater built in 30 AD and, at the time, outside of the city walls. Standing out as the marvel it is, the Verona Arena was originally used as an amphitheater that hosted more than 20,000 people for events like hunting games and, of course, gladiator fights. After the fall of the Roman Empire, people actually used it as a hiding place from invading armies. Over the following years, it was used once again for animal fights, human fights, and even as a concentration camp for prisoners by Napoleon. Since then, it has been used as a center for culture, putting on events for mostly operas and ballets, being officially devoted to the two in 1913. It is also used for films and historical movies, but has become somewhat of a famous concert hall, hosting bands such as One Direction, Pearl Jam, Sting, Paul McCartney, Muse, Whitney Houston, and many others. Performances are still held to this day, and this is a picture from the stage during an Egyptian-themed opera, which brings me to the site that actually caught my attention outside of the arena. I was shocked to find Egyptian statues in the streets surrounding the arena, fenced off and stacked up. Apparently, they are sometimes stored out on the streets in between shows. I was thoroughly surprised to find the exterior littered with Egyptian statues, to then find out that they were props for show and not the real thing. I assumed that they were being transported to a museum for an Egyptian exhibit. I then backtracked a little bit and went down the street to my right of my starting point. Just a little ways down the street, I ran into a small park that caught my eye. Piazza Pratoval is a small park just south of the Verona Arena with a few interesting statues and just a general place of peace and rest in the middle of the large city. The anchor statue on the right is commemorated to the fallen sailors of World War II. Unfortunately, I struggle to find the explanation for the other statues, but I would love to have a small space like this to stop and take a rest when walking around this beautiful city. I then took somewhat of a roundabout trip through the streets of Verona, seeing some of the less touristy areas of the city, eventually making my way back up north. I passed behind the Ansel Davoli, which is a government office right next to the Verona Arena, and then continued north. Eventually, I came to find my final stop, which was a hole in the street, and I couldn't help but find and see what was there. It turns out that it's a section of the ancient Roman street that was at one of the gates of the ancient Roman city of Verona. Not only did I find the road, but just around the corner was a piece of the original gate that led into the city from Bologna and Aquileia. This gate has gone by a few names over history. Unfortunately, we don't know what the original Romans called it, but it was called the Porta San Fermo because it was only about a block away from the Church of San Fermo. Then, during the Renaissance, it was called the Arco di Valerio and is now called the Porta Leone for a Roman tomb with two lions. This was the last stop on my trip, and I hope that you had as much fun as I did discovering the city of Verona.